Hi, it's Elise here at Bowen Library with a whole new teen book spotlight. So for this week, we are starting something like we've never done this before. What we're going to be starting is it's going to take us a couple of weeks to get through. That's right, we got parts in this one, and we are starting with part one today because here's what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. We're going to be doing a little bit of something different. Maybe you could even use it for a challenge, or you can make your own challenge out of it. But we are going to be exploring books in like an alphabet order. So we have picked one book for every single letter of the alphabet. And because of this, we have an incredible mixture. We have some nonfiction, there's some graphic novels, there's some amazing, some of my favorites over the past couple of years. But for today, we are focused on A through F, okay? So next week we'll pick up letter G on for the next 6. So stay tuned. It's gonna take us a couple of weeks to get through, but it's gonna be awesome. So we're gonna start with A today, so here we go. Are you ready? One of my favorites from the past year. I think it almost won every single award under the sun. And if you read it, or if you have read it, you know exactly what I mean. We're gonna start with All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir, and I will tell you this: I was a little reluctant to read this one at first because Sabaa Tahir is known for her fantasy. I mean, like the Ember and the Ashes quartet, like she's known for that. This is not a fantasy, okay? This is a realistic. We start meeting by Sal and Noor. They're both 18-year-old Pakistani teens living in a small town in California, and they each have their own stories and troubles that keep them up at night. For Sal, it's trying to keep their small family motel afloat without having to sell it. His parents worked so hard for it. That's what brought them to the United States. All while his mother's health continues to fail and get worse. And for Noor, it's trying to get out of this town. She wants to go away to college when they graduate, and she wants to get away from her abusive uncle who owns a liquor store, and his plan is for her to end up behind the counter of that liquor store. But she feels like she's beholden to him because when she was younger, while still living in Pakistan, there was an earthquake that came that basically took out her entire family, and her uncle came and found her and rescued her and has raised her. And she doesn't know what to make of that guilt. Now, this is told through both of their points of view, as well as the story of Sal's mother is interwoven throughout, from the time how she was arranged to marry her husband Sal's father, how they moved from Pakistan to the United States. And Sal and Noor will find themselves making choices they never could have imagined, all in the name of family, love, and trying to be true to themselves. This amazing realistic novel, one will leave you breathless. There is a hint of romance, but that's not the main focus of the story. There are some twists that will come that I wasn't expecting, especially for your typical realistic story. There are some pretty realistic depictions of Islamophobia. There's racism, poverty, trauma, abuse, but it's all integral to the story. The audio version is pretty incredible as well. All My Rage. For B, we have Bluebird. So it's 1946 and World War II has just ended. But for Ava Gerst and her nonverbal friend Bridget, life is just starting over as they have come to the United States as German refugees. They are welcomed and greeted by the American Friends Service Committee, where they are fed, they are housed for the time being, but Ava is carrying a secret which she cannot let no one can know what this secret is. It's the fact that her father was a Nazi doctor who ran experiments on prisoners at concentration camps. And she has made a deal with the American government. She has to find her father, and she has to turn him in to the American government in order to be allowed to stay. But what Ava honestly really wants to do is she wants to find her father. But she doesn't want to turn him in. She instead wants to kill him. There are so many storylines within this plot, which adds to the whole scenario. It will leave you wanting to know what's going to happen as the plot comes to this penultimate crossroads, and Ava will need to make her choice. Filled with parts of our history which are not shared or talked about. I knew very little about what happened after World War II, especially with German refugees coming over. Because Jewish refugees were accepted, but Germans, not so much by the American people. You will totally enjoy this one, even if you are not a historical fiction reader. There's some mystery in it, there's some romance. Bluebird. Our C is crossing the line, and I will preface this one with this. I would never have picked this one up on my own. And there's a reason why I ended up reading it. I am so glad I did. Okay. So this nonfiction book is all about how polo, that's right, polo, what you see, like the royal family over in England playing that polo on horses. Yeah. All about how polo changed this author's life as well as his brother's. Now, growing up in the rough neighborhood of West Philadelphia, Kareem was exposed to gun violence, drug abuse, addiction, and doing what it just took to stay alive on a daily basis. It was when he was 8 years old, though, that he stumbled upon, literally, this program that's called Work to Ride. And it was in this horse stable in the middle of the city of Philadelphia that it provided children an opportunity to learn how to play polo as long as they helped to take care of the horses and they stayed out of trouble. It is through this program that Kareem learned how to play the sport, and it ended up changing his life. But it wasn't easy as he faced challenges on and off the field. But each made him a very different person from what he could have been and who he is today. I know it doesn't sound like it would be an exciting read. I'm right there with you. But it is so good. I was cheering Kareem on and his brothers. You will find yourself dreaming of something you would like to do to improve yourself, something you would never imagine trying, but you do. Yeah, an amazing story. Trust me on this one. Okay, again, I know it's not the easiest sell, but it's so good. Crossing the line. D, Dancing at the Pity Party. Okay, this one is a graphic memoir. Okay, so it's a nonfiction, true story, an autobiography and graphic novel version. And I will preface this one that you may need a box of tissues. I made it to the very, very end before I needed some. You might not get as far as I did, but I needed some, okay? So growing up, our author, Tyler, she's always had her family, and that includes her mother. They were just your typical, normal family growing up in Florida, okay? Fast forward to when she's 19 years old, though. She's away at her first year of college, and she gets, her mom calls her one day, and her mom reveals to her that she's been diagnosed with a pretty aggressive form of cancer. And not only is it aggressive, but she is at stage 4, which is kind of like the worst of the worst type deal. That diagnosis ends up changing everything for Tyler and her family. Now, Tyler does not realize what that actually means, though, until she comes home for the summer and she sees how different her mother looks, and that it's her mom, but she's not the same person she was when Tyler last saw her. It's when her mom dies, and I will tell you, mom does die about halfway through, that Tyler starts to live and experience a new normal, which is now life without her mom. Now, this graphic memoir is part of story about the lead up to death. Part of the first half is about her mom's diagnosis and how Tyler and the family cope with that. Mom does die halfway through, not a spoiler alert, but the whole second half is about what happens after that person dies and Tyler going through that grieving process and realizing people do treat you differently, or what do you say when someone says something about your mom, or yeah. So Tyler's Jewish faith plays a huge role before, during, and after the funeral. They sit Shiva. That whole process was incredibly eye-opening in this story, but this is an honest look at the grieving process. It's when it's incredibly touching. It's in a personal read. Yeah, again, you might need the box of tissues. Dancing at the Pity Party. RE takes us to the Electric Kingdom. So it's the year 2043 in New Hampshire, and the world has been ravaged by these creatures that people call flu flies. And they spread this horrific, deadly flu humanity is pretty much wiped out. Now, 18-year-old Nico has been living with her dad and their dog, and I will tell you this right now. The dog does make it at the end, okay? Don't worry. Dog stays alive, okay? They're living on this isolated farm, and her dad tells her he has been bitten by one of these flu flies, and he is going to eventually die. So he sends Nico on this journey to travel to the city, which will be Manchester, New Hampshire, and there's this anomaly, for lack of a better term. There's this place in Manchester that if Nico can get there and do what she needs to, it could possibly end all of this. Nico doesn't really actually believe that this is a real thing, but what other choice does she have? She can either go on this trek, or she can just watch her father die, and then she's stuck trying to survive all by herself. As she sets off in the woods with her dog, she meets a few others on the road. They make this ragtag group of survivors, and soon they find themselves on a journey through this apocalyptic countryside in which they will be tested in every way they can imagine, and then some. This science fiction dystopian survival story, I will tell you, it can be kind of an intricate read as it goes. The end gets a little like kind of intense in terms of trying to understand what's going on. But if you give it the understanding, you give it the patience to fully comprehend what's happening, it's worth the time. Electric Kingdom. And our last one for this week is our F. This would be Fallout. We got Steve Shinkin. You know how I love him. So here we go. Okay, this is marketed as his follow-up, his sequel to Bomb, which is an amazing it's even a graphic novel now, but it's a nonfiction story. This one comes right after Bomb, okay? So atomic bomb has dropped. World War II has ended. So what happens next? Oh, that would be, the start of the Cold War. This one takes a look at spies, secret codes, the start of the arms race, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the construction of the Berlin Wall, and even into the flight of Gary Powers, which becomes this lightning rod that only makes the tensions between the USSR and the United States even that much more intense. This amazing nonfiction work is one that will give you the big picture of the Cold War, kind of how it started, what were some of the main events, but will also break everything down into detailed images, as well as to introduce you to players, both large and small, involved in this era that will last decades, okay? This will end up changing the world's history as we know it in so many ways, even some we're still dealing with today. Amazing work again by Steve Shinkin, just like all his other stuff. If I learned a ton reading this, you will too. Fallout. So these were titles A through F as we start taking a look at our alphabet through book titles, okay? So I encourage you to come on out, check out one of these amazing titles, or if you want to start your own alphabet challenge, take a look, browse our shelves, because we got tons, okay? It was so hard for me to pick these. You can do your own alphabet challenge too. I would love to hear about it. I hope you have an amazing week, and I hope you tune back next time for part 2 of our alphabet series on our Teen Book Spotlight.